Welcome back to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Before the badge came the battles. In part one of this powerful two-part episode, Kristin takes us back to her roots, growing up in rural Arkansas, navigating a childhood marked by addiction, divorce, and instability. She opens up about becoming a mom at 17, getting married young, and the 911 call that unexpectedly set her on a path toward public service. This episode lays the foundation for a story of resilience, recovery, and the road to finding purpose after pain. Raw, honest, and just the beginning. Tune in now to hear Kristin's journey from chaos to calling.
You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 8158 Podcast Stories of Sacrifice. Today's guest, we have Kristin. She is a police officer, and she is a woman of many talents. She has gone through many careers. So let's give Kristin a warm welcome. How you doing, Kristin?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It's definitely an honor to have you on here.
I appreciate that.
I know it's hard for officers to kind of get on here and talk about certain things and, depending on their departments or whatever. So it's harder for them to get on here to spill the beans.
Totally get that. Sometimes it is, yes.
All right. So in opening, can you take us back to your childhood? What was life like growing up in a rural Arkansas area?
It was fun. I mean, I grew up what I would consider poor now, looking back, but we lived in the middle of nowhere in a place called Possum Grape, Arkansas. We did have our own off-ramp. It does exist, but we lived in the middle of nowhere. We lived on a farm, cut hay every year. And it was a very humbling experience. We didn't have a lot, but we had everything we need. And I thank God for it every single day. I think it shaped me into a lot of who I am now. Made me tough. That's for sure.
That little farm girl growing up, it makes you tough.
It really does.
Yeah, I definitely love the country. Country's where I belong, but I was born in the city, so.
I got you. It's still got a little piece of your heart, doesn't it?
It does. I'm not really a big fan of the city, so country's where I belong.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you in the least. It's got its conveniences, but the country is where it's at.
Absolutely.
That's the peace. That's the peace right there.
Yeah. Peace and quiet. Yeah.
A slower way of living, too.
Yeah.
Makes you slow down a lot and really appreciate everything that you've got and what God's done for you. So it's nice.
Yeah. The beauty in the landscape is beautiful.
It is true.
How did your family dynamic shape your view of the world, especially watching your mom struggling with addiction?
So I'll go into the backstory here about my mom. I think that is kind of needs to come into play. So my mom left our lives, I would say, whenever my sister and I were pretty young, roughly about 9 o'clock. She struggled with addiction very early on. She was working at a pharmacy and got involved with a girl that worked there that introduced her to what I was told was speed, but come to find out was, I guess it's a variation of methamphetamine. You know, it takes different forms over the years, different methods of making it, but at the time it was speed. And she was under the impression that she could be super mom, was what she was told, that she could raise 2 young girls, work full time, still get home, clean the house, and cook dinner. That's where she told me personally that her addiction started. And it was, I would say, pretty rapid. She went downhill relatively fast. I think there was a lot more to it than what we were ever told, obviously. But my sister and I experienced quite a lot with her during the time of her addiction. You know, there was periods of time that we would come home and she would be passed out and we couldn't get her awake. Two young kids, that scares you to death. It kind of is traumatic in its own way. And I would say family dynamic, there was a lot of turmoil for a while. I mean, obviously her and my dad fought quite a bit. So we witnessed some of those incidents. My mom, during the height of her addiction, when we still lived with her, she was pretty narcissistic, I would say, to an extent where she would almost use me and my sister to manipulate my dad to stay around or to come back. So, I mean, you pick up on those nuances as an adult that you didn't see happening while you were a child. So that knowing those things existed and me being in law enforcement, I can spot it a lot easier now, you know, because I've seen it, I've lived it. And I would say that it really made me probably a better officer for that very reason. But also, I mean, growing up with an addicted mother, I have a compassion, I would say, for addicts because I loved an addict. So, I mean, she was my mom. Despite the fact that I'm disagreed with a lot of the things that she did, and she did get clean on her own. But I loved her. I mean, you know, you carry a special place in your heart for people like that. And it did help me to be able to see it in other people and to have compassion for addicts' children. You know, a lot of them grew up a lot like me and my sister did, just angry and not understanding, like, you know, how a parent could choose that over their own kids. So I think that really did shape me a lot.
Right. Yeah, we often find that a lot of first responders, especially police officers, are good at their jobs because of that past.
Mm-hmm.
They get into law enforcement due to that. And I've heard that before from other officers that have lived in dysfunctional households that have become good officers because of that very reason.
And I think a lot of the public just doesn't even take into consideration that we all have past as well, you know. And that is kind of a disconnect, I would say, between the general public and people who work in law enforcement or public service, period, is we're people too. We grew up in similar families with similar experiences, but nobody ever takes the time to ask the questions. And so we don't form the connections.
Right. What role did your dad and grandma play in your life during those early years?
So my dad, I would say, he taught me the meaning of hard work. That man would work until his hands bled to take care of his family. Obviously, he wasn't available, I would say, as emotionally as we probably needed him to be. I mean, he grew up in a different time where men didn't really express their emotions too much. So I wouldn't say he was just the warm and fuzzy. He was definitely not that, but he also worked nights. And undoubtedly, it was hard for him to be a single father raising two girls because he came from a world of brothers. On top of that, he had no idea what he was doing. He just was doing everything that he could to protect his kids and to get us out of a bad situation, because we did live with my mom for an extended period of time, and it was a very unsafe living environment for one, and it was an unsanitary living environment for two. But like I said, my mom had a way of spinning things to where my dad was kind of the villain. So for a while, we felt like my dad was kind of just stripping us from our mom. We didn't understand behind the scenes what was going on. We didn't know that she was an addict until we got older. So there was a time period there where we were pretty angry, but I was my dad's little best friend, honestly. Like my dad hung the moon and stars, and to this day, I respect the man. He has always been a hard worker. So he taught me to be tough. And he taught me to keep my head up, and he taught me how to work hard. My grandmother, on the other hand, I don't know that they got better than she did. Sorry if I start to cry. She taught me about God, and I thank her every single day, because I owe my spiritual relationship to her. You know, she walked me through salvation. She made sure my sister and I made it to church on Sunday. And even though I did stray later on in life from God, it's because of her that I had that relationship that I managed to find my way back eventually. She prayed me out of a ton of situations, undoubtedly. And despite the fact that my mom was who she was, and this was my dad's mother, by the way, that raised us. So she always told us to love our mom, and she showed her so much love and compassion. She never would talk bad about her. And that's the role that my grandma played. Man, she was just a saint from day one, you know, like the hands and feet of Jesus for sure. The hands and feet of Jesus for sure, because she never did not welcome somebody into her home. And my sister and I have carried that into the way that we run our houses. And I think just the way that we treat people in general. My grandma never met a stranger, and we don't, you know, so I owe a lot of who I am to who she was. And I mean, she lived her life for God. The woman couldn't hardly read or write, but she would study her Bible to the best of her ability. I got to grow up watching her do that. And, you know, it brought me back to a better place as an adult. So I'm super grateful for that.
So you'd say she was basically your rock.
Oh, she was. Most definitely.
Family.
She spent her entire life raising kids. Like, she was one of 11 kids, and then she raised her brothers and sisters, and she raised her own kids, and then she took in grandkids that she didn't have to. And like, she was literally everything for everybody. So we were all very blessed to have her.
Sounds like it. Sounds a lot like my grandmother.
Aren't we grateful for grandparents that really love their grandkids? Because I cannot, if she wouldn't have done what she had done, if she had said, no, I'm not gonna take care of these kids, I'm not gonna let them stay with me, I've got my own things going, there's no telling where my sister and I would be, truthfully.
Yeah.
God had his hand in it, that's for sure.
Yep. He's put a hedge of protection around you.
Absolutely.
So we're going to kind of break into your younger motherhood years. Early on, you became a mom at the age of 17, and then you were married at 18. What was that experience like at such a young age?
So I actually got pregnant when I was 17, just 2 weeks before I graduated high school. I didn't find out that I was pregnant for about 6 months, but obviously it was hard. Like I said, my dad was a hard man, so having to tell him was not an easy feat by any means, but I was taught very early on to take responsibilities for my actions, and I very much value the lesson that I learned in that. I knew it was going to be hard, and everything you think you know comes to an abrupt halt whenever you find out you're fixing to be a parent or bring kids into the world. I grew up very fast. I thought I was grown then, but obviously I was not. That was another one of God's ways of humbling me. She'll be 18 this year. So she is the same age I was whenever I became a mom, and she has exceeded expectations. But that being said, it was a struggle. You know, I had plans to go to college and to do all these things. I never wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be a microbiologist. I was going to go to school and play softball and do all these things. And then lo and behold, here comes a bouncing baby. So to make things right, you know, we lived in the Bible Belt. I was not going to bring a child into the world out of wedlock. So got married 7 days after I turned 18. We moved out and we started a family. We weren't ready by any means, but we had to get ready. And I grew up, and she and I grew up together a lot, really. You know, there was a lot of first for us. So she taught me how to be a mom. She taught me how to be a good human, to care about somebody else other than myself.
Yeah, children are definitely a huge, huge responsibility, especially at a young age.
Absolutely. But we did it. So
yeah, you manage, you find a way, you know.
Absolutely.
I personally have that same experience. Of course, my first daughter didn't come along until I was about 20, but I was married at 19, and we had our first child at 20. So it was a long, hard road.
It really is. You know, I mean, I can't, it's hard to think about it being any different because I've never known another way. So it's just really strange, but I've tried to explain to them, like, hey, look at the mistakes I make, and trust me, she hems me up on that all the time. Like, do you think I was a mistake? You think I was a mistake? No, I don't think you were a mistake by any means. It's just not the plan that I had for myself, and I want them to do better. As parents, we always want them to be better, do better, you know, and take a different road than what we took, so they don't have the hardships and the heartbreaks and, you know, the trials that we had. And so both of my girls have done amazing things. She actually signs tomorrow to go into the National Guard.
Nice.
So she's going to do great things. Both of them are, and I could not be more blessed.
Yes, definitely. Congratulations, and thank you for her service.
Oh, absolutely. I will let her know.
We definitely need our servicemen and women to guard our country.
It's not what I envisioned for her. That's for sure. She's very much my peace and love hippie child. The military kind of caught me way off in left field for sure. But I mean, I believe that if God places something on their heart, then we'll just go with it. You know, we'll ride that pony until we can't ride it no more. So here we go.
Yeah, my cousin Bill, he was a 20-year veteran in the Guard. So,
wow, that's amazing. Yeah, a lot of people assume that I was pre-military, but that was never even interested me at all. So, like, when she told me about it, I was like, wow, that's something. Okay. That is something.
Yeah, off left field. There you go.
Oh, it was way off. But I'm telling you, like, if you knew her personality, she is so, I hate to use the word ditzy, but I mean, she's a beautiful soul, just not anything military related. Like, you talk to her and it's like, no, there's no way. Right. So maybe they need her. Maybe she's what they need.
Right. Exactly.
Bring some light.
Yeah, definitely lift some spirits, hopefully.
And she'll do it. She will.
How did going through a divorce at 21 impact your personal journey?
Oh, wow. So I would say that was probably the catalyst for a laundry list of mistakes that just ensued from, the time I was 21 up until I was almost 30. So obviously I was busy having kids during my sowing my wild oats years, you could say. And as I said, we got married young. Me and my ex-husband, we got married straight out of high school. And then there was really no time, I would say, for us. I personally did not know what a good marriage was supposed to be modeled after. You know, my parents themselves were not a very good role model for that. His parents were married, and they had a good, strong relationship, but I had no knowledge of how to be a good wife, truthfully. And I wasn't. I was a mom, and I felt like, you know, early on that I had outgrown him because we were kids when we got married. So once we decided to get divorced. We went ahead and just bit the bullet and did that. We stayed friends for a long time, but it's kind of like I just made a series of really bad decisions. And, you know, even my grandma, who I was very, very close to, as you know, I stopped talking to her for an entire year because she disagreed very heavily with how I was living my life at the time. And, it was just one of those things. And by the grace of God, she called me one day and was just like, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. Like, I love you no matter what. And we kind of rekindled, I would say, our relationship again. But she told me then, she said, you're going to spend your 20s making mistakes, your 30s cleaning them up, and you won't start living until you're in your 40s. And that is very much exactly what happened. Like, my 20s were a string of just, bad relationships and making bad decisions and not being a good parent, quite frankly. I just, all of the mistakes that I made, I would say, got made while I was sowing my wild oats. After 21, I had 2 young kids, but I wanted to go out and live my life, and I was very selfish for a very long time. And my kids took the back burner, and I made me priority number one. And looking back, there was a lot of wasted years, a lot of wasted time. So I would say that getting divorced then probably is what set all of that into motion. Did we need to get divorced? Yeah. I really do not think that we were ever meant to get married. That was our first mistake, is that we forced something that wasn't ever meant for us. But God has turned it around and used it for good. He's got a wonderful wife now. She is a fantastic stepmom, like, very blessed, very blessed. And obviously I met my husband, and, everything happens for a reason, I'm convinced.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm no stranger to making a mess of my 20s and trying to clean them up in the 30s.
It's hard work, man. It is hard work.
Absolutely.
My dad always told me that you can do a million things right and one thing wrong, and people will remember you for the one thing you did wrong. And that is the truth. The truth. Like, I have spent the majority of my late 20s, early 30s trying to make a better name for myself and, start walking in what God intended for me to walk in. And it in itself has been a very big uphill climb.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not an easy climb, and you just got to keep fighting and keep working towards that.
That is true. I mean, I will say some good things did come out of it, though. Like, after the divorce, I started working because, I was a stay-at-home mom while we were married. And that's what led me to, start riding the ambulance and doing that and going into my law enforcement career as well. So, it served its purpose.
So that kind of moves us on to the next question that you'd mentioned, your sister's medical emergency being a turning point. Can you share that story and how it influenced your decision to serve?
Sure. So, little backstory. My sister and I are very close. We're exceptionally close in age as well. We actually stay the same age for 8 days. We're 11 months and 22 days apart. Same mom and same dad. Our parents wasted no time having their children. But we have always been best friends. Like, obviously, we were trauma bonded through everything that we had gone through with my mom. But at age 11, my sister started having seizures. So she went through the motions, and we got her diagnosed. She was an epileptic, and she has been ever since. They said that it was a possibility she could probably outgrow it, but she has not. And she's 37. So it's just something that we've accepted, and we knew that we were going to have to deal with. So throughout the course of our childhood, obviously my sister would periodically have seizures, which prevented her from being able to drive. So we spent a lot of our time together. Pretty much every waking moment me and my sister spent together. So after I got pregnant and moved out of my dad's house and got married, she moved with me because we had always been together and we would always be together. And obviously at that time I was still married. I was probably on the verge. I think that was right before divorce. Just maybe even 6 months. Like, a lot happened in a 6-month span over this course of time. So my sister lived with me. She had gotten up one morning and we were having coffee and she had a seizure, which wasn't uncommon. But she had another one right behind it. She came out of the first one. I got her set up on the couch. While she was sitting on the couch, she had another one. That was very uncommon. It scared me to death. I ended up calling 911. They sent the ambulance to our house, which in the town we lived in, we had a very small volunteer ambulance service at the time. They came, showed up to our house, and took my sister to the hospital. The lady who worked as the EMT in the back asked if I would want to start riding the ambulance. She actually let me ride in the back, which wasn't very common. I mean, a lot of times they won't let family ride in the back of the ambulance on the way to the hospital, but they did me that day. And so I got to ride, and we got to talking, about my sister and this, that, and the other. She said, I think you would really like this. So I started third riding in the ambulance. I would drive sometimes. It was just volunteer. So they gave me my own little radio, and I started volunteering. Well, you get to know everybody when you're a first responder, whether that be EMTs, paramedics, dispatchers, fire, police. And the dispatch supervisor for the city that we lived in had an unexpected opening come up, and she hemmed me up one day. She was like, do you think you would want to try your hand at dispatching? And I was like, I guess. So I didn't have anything better to do. I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, so I started dispatching for the police department. And I loved it. Like, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the chaos of it all. I fell in love with, the stories. I think that was probably one of the coolest parts. Dispatching is not for the faint of heart. It will always hold a special place in my heart, because those women and men have a very hard job. Like, your brain has to fill in the gaps from the calls that you get. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. You don't ever get to see what the officer sees or what the firefighter sees. So you're, and I mean, we're human. Our brain has a way of playing tricks on us as it is. So, like, a lot of times you manifest things that maybe are worse or better just off of a phone call. And after I started dispatching for a little while, probably 2.5, 3 years, I went on a ride along with one of the officers that we worked with, and absolutely just loved it. I was like, man, I think I could do this. And made the mental decision then, took the leap, and off to the police world I went, full send. So here I am now.
So what drew you to want to wear the badge and to keep going in that direction?
At first, it was the excitement. Like, obviously, after sitting behind the radio for so long, listening to the police chases and the foot chases and, the domestics and the medical calls that they got to go on, you hear all of that, but then you want to see it. So it was I want to go out and do it. And then once I started doing it, it wasn't as exciting as you thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? There's a plethora of downtime where you're just piddling around, driving around your police car, watching the graffiti on trains, like you're doing all this. And the hot calls are not as frequent as they seemed. But I would say it changed for me probably after my first DOA call. I actually was reading through the questions and got to thinking about, like, when the shift happened for me, that it wasn't just about the excitement, and it shifted into the helping. And I would say that it was my very first accident call. It was, do you mind if I tell it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I actually responded to a call that came in for the county. I was working for the city, but it was a rollover accident for an 18-wheeler that happened in the county. And I was the first officer on scene. It was very early in the morning. And specifically, I remember the dew on the grass. That is a very ironic thing that sticks out in your head, but that's how I remembered that it was early morning. It was a water tanker truck. He had rolled over into a ditch. But when I got there, the driver was hung in a seatbelt, and his driver's side door was laying flat against the ground, but it was kind of in a ditch. So just very, very little of his face was visible at the time. But when I got there, he was still breathing. I couldn't get him out of the vehicle. And I remember a little jumping spider crawling like on some dewy grass while I laid on the side of the ground beside him. And I was like digging, trying to get room for him to continue to breathe. And he couldn't breathe. And so that was my very first accident call where I had somebody pass. And I think that's when it changed for me. Like, man, like people really do need us, like we really can help save people, even though I didn't save him. I couldn't save him. I know that there was nothing I could have done. It reminds me of the theory of the soul train. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Are you familiar with the soul train theory?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of the feeling I had about this, like the soul train theory, is that was just his time. There was not a whole lot I could do about it. But I knew then that I needed to be doing more. Helping people was what I was supposed to do with this job. Even though, at that time, I don't necessarily, I feel God led to it now. At that time, I can't say that I felt God led to this job. I do think that changed in my mind during that moment. Like that I knew, hey, this man passed. You know what I'm saying? He's not with us anymore. And this is the moment that it changed for me, that I need to be out here helping folks. Like, it's not just about what the excitement can be or the crazy things you're going to see. It's very real, and it's very real to people. So I think that's when it changed for me.
Yeah. I mean, helping people is definitely number one priority.
And a lot of times when people go into law enforcement, it's not. I can't say that whenever I became a cop that it was my number one priority. And that's regrettable. I think too many people step off into it with that not being first and foremost in their mind, that we are here to help people. And they see the excitement, because that's what I saw.
Right.
And then it'll change you. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse.
Yeah. That is what you were called to do, was to help people.
Yes. That is very true.
That out.
I did find that out the hard way. The very hard way.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
We will return after this quick ad break.
The William H. Bill Butler Jr. Foundation is on a mission to honor first responders and support those who serve. We provide scholarships for families who have lost a hero in the line of duty, offer second chances to juvenile offenders who are working to rebuild their future, and help new recruits pursuing careers as first responders. Through generous donations and the sale of merchandise, we're building a community that uplifts, empowers, and creates lasting impact. You can be a part of this mission as well. Visit 8158podcast.com to donate or shop today. Together, we can support those who serve, honor those we've lost, and give hope to those who need it most. Behind every badge is a story, and behind every story is a sacrifice. This is the 8158 podcast, where we honor the lives and legacies of first responders and their families. If our mission speaks to your heart, if these stories move you like they move us, join us on Patreon. For just $5 a month, you'll get ad-free listening, exclusive merchandise, behind-the-scenes content, and video episodes only available to our patrons. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement, and you can be a part of it. Support us at patreon.com/8158podcast. Let's continue to share the stories that deserve to be heard.
So we're going to kind of get into some tough stuff, if you don't mind talking
I don't
about
mind.
some of
I've
these.
got my tissue.
Okay. I know that you mentioned earlier in the pre-interviews that you've been very open about some difficult decisions and personal struggles, including your affair and stepping away from the job. How did that moment affect your career and your identity?
Okay. So as I said, throughout my 20s, I was a pretty selfish person. And When I mean selfish, I mean selfish. Selfish enough to have an affair and wind up. I will take responsibility on behalf of me and my husband because he is not currently here to take responsibility for himself as well. But we both obviously played a part in the demise of our marriages at the time. So we both realized the error of our ways. But during that time, it also affected my career because you always think that you can keep things a secret until they're no longer a secret. And that's how I would say all affairs work. Is everybody thinks that nobody will get hurt so long as nobody knows about it. And that's not entirely true. So we rode that pony for a good while. And then, as everything happens, things come out, rumors start to spread. And then before you know it, it's out and you just have to deal with it. So we crossed that bridge as we came to it. At the time, we were brought to the ultimatum that either I could leave or he could leave. So being a female in law enforcement, we both worked at the same agency. I need to preface this with that. We both worked for the same department, and it was brought to us both that either I could go or he could go. So we talked about it, and I made the decision then that I would just leave. I assumed that being a female in law enforcement, I would have a much better chance at going to another department because females are few and far between, truthfully. And especially as many years of service as I've had, I was already vetted. You know what I mean? I'd already worked for a long time and people knew who I was. And I was like, I'll be able to leave and go find another job elsewhere. It won't be an issue. That in fact was not true. I think we all know what they say about assumptions. So I was very humbled by that experience, but I see now that it was God's provision, because sometimes his prevention is his protection. So I was not meant to find another place in law enforcement for a little while. I needed to learn some hard lessons about myself, to stop being such a selfish person and to grow as a human and to step back into the role that God had for me. I see that now. So I was blacklisted around, I would say, our county. Surrounding counties, like everybody knew that I was not somebody that they wanted to work for them because of the affair. So that has a way of sticking with you. Yet again, it's one of those things, you can do a million things right and one thing wrong, and they'll always remember you for the one thing you did wrong. I was very much known for that. And I think it's wild sometimes, like me and my husband joke about it now, but at the time, like, man, I caught grief over it. And he just kind of sat back unscathed the whole time, even though we were very much in it together. So it was just one of those things that it kind of catapulted me into an entire different area of my life that needed to be seen, that I needed. It was a wake-up call that I needed. So that was that.
So is that what kind of pushed you in towards corrections and bail bonds?
Well, yes. So obviously I had tried to be a cop after I left that agency, and was shut down time after time. So I decided then that I would go to the prison. I felt like that would keep me kind of in the justice field. And I was good at it. I was good at being a correctional officer. I absolutely hated the job. The job itself, I loathed. I cried every single day going to work and leaving work. I worked in a men's prison, which is not for the faint of heart, especially being a female. But it's not the inmates really that bothered me. You kind of expect them to act the way that they acted. That didn't catch me off guard, but it was the other officers and kind of the people that just work there. That's what is wearing on your soul. But I had been a street cop for 6 years, and then I went from doing that, having all this free reign, to being locked up for 12 hours a day. And it was miserable. It was absolutely miserable. And then I decided to leave corrections. That was the one and only job that I've ever just woken up one morning and said, no, I'm not going. Like, I was always real good about giving my 2 weeks notice and this, that, and the other, and putting in my letter of resignation and trying to do it the right way, you know, being adult about the whole situation. And that was one that I just couldn't. I absolutely loathed it. So then after that, I started working for a bail bond company, which is like polar opposite to putting people in jail. I was taking them out after that. Same people, just a different role that I played in their life. And I did that for quite a while. It was interesting in its own way. It came with its own, I would say, moral implications. You know, there was a lot of things that you really just got to make a choice. You choose between wrong and right or money. And because that's how you pay your bills, you know, like getting people out of jail, financing bonds is how you pay your bills. So I fell back a lot on the, you know, I don't want to know. The less I know, the better off I am. I'm not going to judge people. I fell back on that a lot. And it was hard because, you know, your moral compass is pointing one direction and then you're living in the world. So obviously it's pointing a different direction. But then I had law enforcement to back me up on another side, who these people would tell me like what they were in jail for or what they had done. And I'm like, you probably really shouldn't be out. You know what I mean? Jail is probably the best place for you, but they have the legal right to bond. So it's what I did. You know, we would get them out of jail, and we obviously, bounty hunters are not a thing in Arkansas. So if you're a bail bondsman, you hunt your own people. And if they would skip, me and my husband, we would go find them and put them back in jail. And we did that for a long time. It was interesting. Saw a lot of things, met a lot of people, experienced a lot of things. It was a wild ride.
What did those chapters in your life teach you about the justice system and yourself?
Cool. Wow. So the justice system is flawed, for sure. That I would say that working at the prison taught me that more than anything. I saw a lot of things while I was at the prison that I hate to speak on behalf of other people. I can only really speak for myself, but for myself, I saw things and reported things that I knew were not right that just went overlooked. You know, I would say that sexual assault is very prevalent in male prisons. Men are not probably going to report it 90% of the time. They don't even report it in the free world 90% of the time, let alone are they going to snitch in a men's prison. They're not going to do that. And, you know, I think guards are specifically trained to be able to identify sexual assault. I know I went through the same classes they went through. I was specifically trained on how to identify sexual assault. So if you see it and you choose just not to do anything about it, or you choose not to say anything about it, or you have COs that have brought it to you and then you choose not to act on it, then you've answered. You've answered for it. I know where you stand on it. I know your position on it. And it's flawed. It's sickening. There's a lot of people that are taking up room in state prisons, I believe, that probably need more mental help than they do correctional help. I think that's a big deal. But I think sometimes the system just doesn't know where to put them. Like, where do they fit in? You know, people with schizophrenia who also use meth and wind up getting arrested. Do they really need to be in jail? I mean, or do they need mental help? And I think a lot of it, they just get caught up in this tumultuous system. And then obviously, you know, bail bonds is the same situation. Like, there are so many people that, for one, the justice system is failing them, but they're also failing law enforcement, because you have beat cops that are out here doing the hands-on work. Like, truly, you know, they're going out here, they're spending their time, their energy, and putting their life on the line to get some really, really dangerous people off the street, just for them to be put in jail and go into the court system, which in turn screws everybody. I mean, there's really no way for me to say it nicely. And I have been on the receiving end of that myself, you know, like where you'll arrest someone for a very violent crime. They have friends in high places, or the prosecutor just doesn't feel like messing with it that day, and then they turn right around and let them go, and then the cops are sitting here like throwing their hands up like, why did we do all that? Why did we waste all of our time doing all this? So it's flawed. It's flawed. Very much so.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that one.
So, I mean, I think that cops take the brunt of the flaw because we are the face that everyone sees. We are the first ones there. So people are angry about the broken system, and they just need somebody to vent to or vent about. And it's 90% of the time police officers.
Right.
What was the last part of your question? Did you ask how that shaped me?
Yes.
Okay. I would say that knowledge is power. So seeing that changed for me personally, how I look at people and how I address people. And I mean, from a moral standpoint, it brought my morals to the forefront of my mind. Like, hey, this is wrong. This is right. This is what you need to do. You need to be fair. And, you know, I mean, fairness is just committing to do what is right, whether it's a fellow law enforcement officer or somebody who uses meth on a regular basis.
Right.
You know, we've got to be fair. And so I think that's what it taught me about myself, is to just treat everybody fair, irregardless to what they do for a living or who they are as a person. So.
Yeah, nobody's above the law, so
No.
everybody's got to be treated the same. And
Agreed.
especially officers know better.
We should actually hold each other to a much higher standard.
Yeah.
I believe.
I would say so. And obviously my cousin would feel the same way.
The majority of us do feel that way.
Yeah. Can you tell us about an incident that caused your post-traumatic stress?
Absolutely. All right. So again, if I cry, apologies in advance. I would say that in law enforcement, if you haven't been told, I will tell you now. So hear me. There will come a time in your career when you have a call or multiple calls that stick with you. You might go to 1,500 accidents where people don't make it, and those things never affect you. You go home and you sleep at night like it never even happened, and you get up and go do it the next day. That happens to every single one of us, but your day will come. And mine did. I was about 4.5 years into my law enforcement career, and I was working for a county at the time. I was working an overnight shift. Now, mind you, I will preface this. I had worked umpteen accidents. I had worked umpteen domestic calls. I had seen and heard just about anything that you could see or hear. But this call hit me different, just like I was told that it would. But we always think that it won't be us, don't we? So I was literally 15 minutes from going off shift. I worked 6P to 6A. I got dispatched to a rollover accident. And in the county we worked in, it's prevalent for rice farming. So there's these huge ditches on either side of the roads. Almost everywhere you drive, we call them sloughs. But roughly they're about 5 to 10 feet deep in some spots. I was really close to my house, so I was already on my way home from work to check out a service, and I wasn't far from where the accident was. So I made it there in about 5 minutes, roughly 3 to 5 minutes. When I got there, it was cold. It was early March, and the ditches were completely full of water. And all I remember, you get tunnel vision during situations like this, but I remember there was just vehicles, probably 3 or 4 of them parked along the side of the road. I look in the ditch and I see just car tires sitting right above the water. I had been told, probably years before when we were doing some water recoveries, that you don't ever wear your vest into the water. And it is crazy how your training comes back to you in moments like that. So on the side of the road, I'm stripping down, like boots are coming off. My vest is coming off. My duty belt's coming off. I just took everything off, laid it in a pile on the side of the road. I handed a random lady, she had blonde hair. handed her my radio. I told her to push the button on the side of the radio, hold it down, and tell them I needed help. So off into the water I went. I remember it being so cold that it would knock the wind out of you. Like, it was so cold. I'm 5'2". I'm not very tall at all. So being in a ditch that is potentially 5 foot deeper of water, I didn't even think about it. I just piled off in it. I was going to do my duty. By the grace of God, somebody, happy little litterer out there, threw a washer, dryer, stove, something off in this ditch. And I was standing on it. And I was reaching through the water. Her window was down. So I was feeling, and I could feel her in the water, but her seatbelt was hung and I couldn't get her seatbelt off. I couldn't move her. I couldn't pull the door against the weight of the water, and I couldn't get her out, and she drowned. I don't really remember much. She was down for about 30 minutes. I was told that after the fact. I just remember my chief deputy showing up, and he said, go home and get you some dry clothes on. So I drove home, and one of the other deputies, which I didn't live far, one of the other deputies, I guess, followed me to my house. I genuinely don't remember any of the conversations that happened between the time I got out of the water till the time I got changed. But I do remember, leaving my vehicle running, my county vehicle. I told the deputy that came to my house that I wanted to go to wherever they were taking her. I just felt like I needed to see it through. She was 18 and she was headed to college that morning for class. And so I went. They took her to the local funeral home. I went to the funeral home, and the guys that I work with, I was the only female that worked for that agency, but they wouldn't let me see her. I was exceptionally angry because I did feel like I needed to see this through. I don't know why. I don't know why this one. Do you know what I mean? I have no clue. I don't know why this one I felt like I needed to do this. I don't know why I wanted to go see her. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But they wouldn't let me, and they did it for my own protection. I know that now. But I really just needed to see this one all the way out. And I found out when her funeral was going to be. I went to her funeral. And at the end of the service, her mom asked to speak with me. So I went to talk to her mom. Her mom gave me a hug. She was crying, obviously. And she said, thank you for trying to save her. And I lost it. I absolutely lost it. Because I guess survivor's guilt gets you. I don't know. I don't know what they call it. But all I knew is that I was out of shape. I was eating French fries and sweet tea every single morning for breakfast. I was smoking. Obviously cops are lazy. I wasn't working out. So I thought to myself, then I was like, please don't thank me because she died. I couldn't save her. And I knew then, I was like, man, if I would have been a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, like maybe I could have gotten her door open and she wouldn't have died. I don't know if that's the case. I probably won't ever know. I might ask God about that whenever I get there. But it literally turned my life around. Like I didn't know that I had PTSD at the time. I just knew that I was depressed, and I knew that I didn't really care about much at all. I didn't care about my job anymore. To the fact that, like one of my bosses actually talked to me about that. Like, you haven't really done anything. Like, you know what I mean? We didn't do debriefs. So like that, it's just not anything you talked about. Like, you just showed up, you did your job, and you went home. And I didn't even realize that I was struggling. I was drinking already, but that picked up. I just things kind of all was going downhill all at the same time. But I had no idea that it was a trauma response. I didn't know that at the time. That took me actually a couple years to ever figure out what it actually was. So that incident itself also set into motion a couple different things. I will say that during that time, I had decided after a little while to step away from law enforcement for a little bit. My heart wasn't in it anymore. I know now that that was part of the PTSD. I just didn't feel the love that I'd once felt for it. I didn't feel like I was doing a good job at my job, which I wasn't because I didn't care. So it has a way of snowballing on you. But I did know that there were some things in my life that needed to change. It just took a little while for me to make the decision to make the change. So.
It's so sad.
Yeah, it was.
So would you say that that was part of the process of now you started drinking a lot more and you started to internalize a lot of this stuff? So now you're starting recovery. I mean, not now, but back then you were in recovery from alcoholism and also having seen an addiction from multiple sides within your family. What helped you find your footing again?
So, man, I was a full-blown alcoholic by the time I made the decision to stop drinking and stop blaming everybody for my problems. So, like I said, the majority of this happened all during my 20s. When I tell you that it was a long 10 years, it was a long 10 years. Obviously, when the drinking started, I was in a relationship at the time with an alcoholic, and it was one of those type of situations that if you can't beat them, join them a lot of times, or we made excuses for one another quite a bit on the drinking, like, oh, it was a rough day, let's have a drink, or you need to go to sleep. So that's a lot of how mine became so heavy, I would say, is I worked night shift. I had a hard time sleeping during the day. So I would come home and I would make me a drink, but that morning drink turned into 2 morning drinks. And then that drink in the afternoon would come after I would pick my kids up from school. And then before I knew it, I was a full-time cop drinking and driving with my kids in the car and feeling like I was above the law. If I'm quite honest with you. I felt like the good old boy system would have me if I ever got stopped. And praise God I didn't. And praise God that I never got into a car accident with my kids in the car, because I was very reckless. Very reckless. I know a lot of people are not as fortunate as I was, but God had his hand on me, and I know that now. So during that time, a couple things had happened. I had taken a break a little bit from law enforcement, like I said, after the accident, and was drinking pretty heavy. During the time of that, I was still part-time at some places. And one of my friends that I worked with was responding to a call for my brother-in-law and got into a car wreck, and he didn't make it. So that also added to the, I would say, anger. There was a lot of anger there for that one. A lot of selfish intent, because, we would have a drink for Aaron. That's what we would do. So I used that sometimes to enable myself. But my ex-husband ended up taking me back to court for custody of my kids. And as I said before, I grew up knowing God. I'd always known God. And throughout the entire time of this 10-year stint that I'm out here just living my best life, making all these bad decisions, the Holy Spirit never left me. I was under conviction the entire time. I just wasn't listening. And I had convinced myself that in the state of Arkansas, no judge in his right mind would ever take somebody's kids from their mother, especially one that was a cop. I had a very, very, very false sense of hope. And I was very wrong. So we went to court. The judge made his decision, and my kids ended up having to go live with their dad. I was mad. I was making excuses that it wasn't my fault, that it was his fault. How could he ever do this to me? But as I said, if you won't hit your knees on your own, God will bring you to them. And he knew that my kids were it. That was the only thing that he could use against me, that I had left, that I still cared enough about to make me change my life. And thank God he did it. Because in that moment, I spent a couple months depressed. You know, it was funny. The things that you remember and that you regret. So we had, my kids would go to his house every other weekend. And me and my ex at the time, me and my current spouse at the time, we would joke about the kids going to their dads. The girls would be in the back seat fighting or something. And then we would look at each other and be like, every other weekend doesn't sound so bad, right? Every other weekend doesn't sound so bad, right? Until that happens. And then every other weekend really sucks. You know? So I can't tell you how many times I regretted saying those words after I only got to see my kids every other weekend. So I made a decision then that things in my life needed to change. I started going back to church, and me and the person I was with at the time ended up getting a divorce. So that was my second divorce, but it was a relationship that I really did need out of. My kids ended up living with their dad. I decided I was going to start eating better and start working out because there was no time to be slow or fat anymore. And I was going to quit smoking and quit drinking. So I did it all at once. Just made a decision to completely turn everything around. And I would say that the getting sober really changed my life, but it was God that changed my life. You know what I mean? Like I had to go through what I went through in order to be the person that I am now. Because without no mess, there is no message. So, you know, here I sit today, a better person because of what I've been through, even though it was self-inflicted. And accountability is huge. So I would say that that is one thing that I carry from that time in my life, that if you're out here doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing, it's nobody else's fault but your own. You've got to be accountable for them. So I do hold people that I have encounters with, you know, criminals and citizens alike, that accountability is huge. I've walked in your shoes. So I made excuses for a long time and it didn't get me anywhere. So that's where I'm at now.
You obviously had to hit your rock bottom to kind of make
And that was
changes.
mine. And everybody's is different, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't, God doesn't use anything. He doesn't take for granted any struggle whatsoever. And he makes beauty from ashes. So things are beautiful now, like truly beautiful now, probably better now than they have ever been in my entire life. But I had to go there in order to get here. And that's just the way that it is.
What role did your time in the ER play in your healing and recovery?
A big one, a really big one. So after bail bonding, side note, my husband retired from policing and decided to come bail bonding with me. So we bail bonded for about 2.5 years together. We moved to a totally different town during this time. I stopped drinking. That's when my sobriety started. We were bail bonding full time. We were training full time. We were just doing our own thing. I was mending a relationship with my kids, with my ex-husband and his wife, and a lot of things were going up. It's crazy whenever you start giving up things, how other things fall into place for them. So a couple years back, legislation had decided that they were going to pass some different bail bond laws in the state of Arkansas that required all 10% of the bail bond money to be paid up front to the jail. So my husband and I was like, well, I don't know how bail bond companies are going to finance anymore, legally anyway. I'm sure that there's a way that they're doing it. I don't know. I haven't talked to a bail bondsman since we left, but we decided then that we were going to move back to our hometown and just kind of go back out into the workforce. Well, my husband took a job at our local hospital as a security officer. and he loved it. Absolutely loved it. I stayed bail bonding for just a little while he worked, and we decided to buy a house and move back. Once we found our house, we moved. Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did know that I didn't want to be a cop again. I did know that for sure at the time. But if you tell God a joke, he will laugh at you. So that's why we're here where we are now. So he said, why don't you go to work at the hospital? And I was like, okay, well, I've never done any of this before. So to the ER I went. They had a couple tech positions open in the emergency department. So that's where I went to work, and fell in love. Like, I absolutely fell in love with it. It was a very rewarding job. Those women and men pour their heart and souls into what they do, and they are very, I would say, unappreciated. I met a lot of really cool people, and I got to do what I felt like God wanted me to do, and that was be a servant. So I got to love on people. It taught me a lot of medical knowledge that I did not have prior. So that was fantastic. I really genuinely thought that I needed to go to nursing school. I felt like that's maybe where God was pushing me to go. And then I was wrong about that as well. So I learned a lot of compassion for people that I didn't have before. I wouldn't say, I think I had it the whole time. I just wasn't using it. Let me rephrase. It taught me how to be compassionate, because those people don't want to be in the ER. 90% of them don't want to be there. So they need to be met with love and grace and compassion. And that was something that we had to execute and practice each and every single day. And so I got really good at it. And it was fun. Like, I actually enjoyed it, getting to meet these people. I still see people now. I actually saw a little old man at church this morning who came over and gave me a hug, and he said, do you remember taking care of me in the ER? And I said, absolutely, I do. You were fantastic. And he hugged my neck, So love goes a long way. Love and kindness go a long way. But, I don't think that's where God intended for me to be after all. So here I am now, back policing.
Which brings us to our next question is, how did it feel to return back to law enforcement in October of 2024, especially working in such a small, close-knit town?
Well, I won't lie to you. At first, I was very skeptical. I had been in prayer about what it was that God wanted me to do. I wasn't sure if nursing school was what I was supposed to do, or if something else was what I was supposed to do, but I had been in prayer about it and was just kind of letting God lead the way. Well, my brother-in-law took a chief's position in my hometown, little bitty tiny place, less than 700 people. And he called me and he said, hey, would you like to come to work? And I was just like, absolutely not. No. That town had always been the redheaded stepchild of the county. Nobody really took the law enforcement there seriously. And I just, once you're a cop in for a little while, the last thing you want is and I had already done a fair job on my own of making a bad name for myself. So adding a what we considered a trash agency to your resume is not really doing anything for yourself, But I prayed about it. Me and my husband talked about it. And I was like, you know what? I'll do it. I'll go. It's just kind of what I felt like God was pushing me to do. And I often use the analogy of Jonah. Like, if God is telling you to do something, I don't have 3 metaphorical days to spend in the belly of a whale. So I'm just gonna go. And when I first went back, for one, I didn't know anybody anymore. I'd been gone from that town for 18 years almost. There was some familiar faces, yes, but like the majority of the people I knew had either grown up or left or passed. But people still knew me. I mean, my daddy still lives there. They know my sister. And I thought I'd made a mistake. I was riding around in this little tiny town with very little going on. It's super sleepy for the most part. Thinking to myself, I'm like, dear Lord, what have I done? Like, I have misread your message and stepped off into this, and it's not what you wanted for me. Like, I didn't listen. But I know now that that is most definitely not the case, because if it wasn't for that tiny little town, I wouldn't be talking to you. So his ways are perfect.
Yeah.
You may not understand them, but they are perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of one of those things, God's will.
It very much is God's will.
You just never know what he's up to.
My nose will not stop running. I apologize. Maybe you sent me your allergies or your cold.
My cold.
Ugh.
Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who serve, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.